Hello and welcome to Multiple Game State. Today we're looking at the Mechanicum in Legions Imperialis. Now, one of the big challenges for me is understanding what models go with what units. I've seen a few reviews of the Mechanicum and the Dark Mechanicum, but I've always struggled to understand what they're talking about. So in this video, we are going to have unit images for everything I'm talking about, and hopefully, like me, you will get a little bit more comfortable understanding which weird name associates with which square robot-y thing. I'll also talk about the box contents, just so we get an idea of how many bases for each unit you get in each box. There are, as you can see here, three kind of what I would say core boxes, arguably two. So you've got the infantry and you've got the battle automata. Now, you could count the Thanatar box as well, but that only has Thanatars in it. All the rules, or almost all the rules, for this faction are in Rise of the Dark Mechanicum book. There is also a PDF that you can get from Warhammer Community that has a few different formations and a few extra things in it. Mostly it's actually for ways for other factions like the Legion, so Space Marines, to get some AdMech units into their force themselves. Mechanicum have a few special rules, so we're going to look at them quickly here. So we've got the Cybernetica Cortex, which is quite like the Solar Auxilia Shaded Command rules. So Cortex units can only take the commands that are listed in it, so normally be two of them. If you have a Cortex controller close enough, though, they can get any order that you want to give them. To help with this, there are Tech Priests, which we'll see later, and that particular special rule, the Tech Priest Auxilia, lets you take three of the Tech Priests in a single support slot rather than just one, if that makes sense. They operate in similar ways to Command, and your HQ will also have that Cortex controller, but this particular support one has, so they can be added on to one of the other units, and there is a special rule here that lets you add them on to infantry, walkers, cavalry, or vehicle attachments, even though they would be technically a different type. And then, the last thing we have there is you can actually put Knights and Titans in. So there will be Titan and Knight slots, and there aren't Titan and Knight and Mechanicum units. So you take them from the support list, strategic assets. And those Knights or Titans that you have as part of your Mechanicum list actually count as being within the Mechanicum. So they don't count towards your 30% for ally. So quite cool. All right, let's start into it. First up, we have the HQs. There are two options, but really only one. So basically, it's both the Archmagus Prime. You do get two models in for the infantry box, and it's on this hover thing, a throne of some kind, I guess you'd say it. And if you want, you can build it without. So, the model actually does end up looking a little bit sparse if you don't build it without, so it might be an idea to see if you can get some other gribbly bits or things that could be kind of servitors added onto it if you've got some spare parts left over. Okay, so this is the profile for it on the base by itself. This is just the Horus Heresy version of it at 28mm. Okay, so what do we have? It has... So it is quite similar to a Legion command. It is actually the same cost, but has one calf less. Now, the weapon trades the Assault and Accurate for the Deflagrate. So Deflagrate is a special rule which generates an extra hit for each unsaved wound. So, in ways it's similar to a Legion command, which generally are quite good, but a lot of that's kind of down to special rules. Here we have a different set of special rules. So we have Battlesmith. Battlesmith lets nearby walker, vehicle, automata, or automated sentries ignore wounds from special rules or from AP of -2 or worse. I take it that -2, -1, or 0 is worse rather than worse for the person getting hit, if that makes sense. And basically, you can ignore them on a 5+. So if you've got one of these Archmagus within a group of walkers, within a group of what we'll see is the Battle Automata, then they essentially get a 5+ save against most things. which is pretty nice. And sorry, it's not a 5+ save, it's a 5+ feel no pain, because this is going to happen after your save. So 2/3 of your troops are going to survive, which is great. So yeah, it's a little bit like the Medicaid rule, if that makes sense. So we have Commander, of course, and then Cortex Controller, which we'll talk about, and then a 5+ in full save. So not bad at all. Now, for an extra 20 points, we can add on the Abeyant, which is obviously that floating pulpit. So it gives an extra move, an extra calf, and an extra wound. An extra wound is pretty big. We also get an extra weapon with a Melt-A-Gun, which has a really nice -3 AP. That actually is a pretty good deal. So I think we'll probably end up doing it this way all the time, unless we're getting really strapped on points. Yeah. And so there are 2 in the box, and a lot of the formations that we will see later do actually have extra HQ options. So, these are probably good choices. I'm not entirely sure. So I think for the first box, I'd probably make both of my Magus Primes on Abeyance, but in later boxes, I might consider doing one or the other, if that makes sense, just to work out the points. For our core troops, we have 2 options. We've got the Trolls and the Talax. And this is what we get from the infantry box. So we get 10 Trolls and 8 Talax, which I think is basically enough for 2 units each. Trolls are about as cheap as you can get. So this is 4 bases for 30 points. Very similar to the Auxilia Las rifles, but these are actually a little worse because they've got -1 calf rather than 0. For the weapons, it's 4 less range, so they're down to 6 rather than 10, and it's 5+ to hit rather than 4+. So these are a good chunk worse than the Auxilia Las rifles, which, would have been considered the worst troops in there. So these are pretty poor. Now, the advantage of them is they have dash morale, which means they will never break. So relatively cheap, and wherever you go, they're going to stay there till the last man. So they make a pretty good tar pit. Basically, your enemy has to kill every last one of them to get rid of them. The other option is the Talax, which sounds like an IKEA bit of furniture. So it's very similar to a Legion Assault Squad, even down to the jump packs. But these come in pairs rather than detachments of 4. So they have 2 dice on our lightning guns, so very similar to the 4 pistols. And the calf is +1 rather than +3. So they are going to be shooting rather than getting to melee. Not that the Assault Squad were great melee or anything. The errata did add an extra weapon in the form of a multi-melta, which is pretty great with that -3 AP. They don't have 2 wound per base, so this unit will be a little bit easier to clear than that of the Legion Assault Squad, but they are going to do a lot more damage, which is very, very nice. So pretty good. Notably, those assault packs will give them bulky, which means you're not going to be able to fit into transports, at least not normal transports. And unfortunately, this faction doesn't have any special transports. Next up, we have the support detachments. So this is everything that you get from the infantry on the left and on the battle automata box on the right. So yeah, so that's 2, 2, 2, and then that's a 2, 2, and a 4 for those Domitards at the bottom. Okay, so first one we're looking at is the Tex Priest Auxilia. So these are really just a cheap way to get Cortex Controller and Battlesmith next to our units for 15 points. Now, they don't have any weapons, so they're only going to be able to contribute in melee, and they are move 5, so as we'll see later, they often will be struggling to keep up with whatever they're attached to. So to really assess the effectiveness, you're going to have to be looking at the orders that the unit they're attaching to has, and whether that Cortex Controller is really going to help. If you've got like a dedicated melee unit and it already has charge and what would be the other one? March, charge and march. That's kind of all you need. You're going to march them until you can charge. So, having this Tex Priest Auxilia for Cortex Controller isn't going to help in that regard. But if you had a unit that had those, but also had some great guns, then this could suddenly become useful. The Battlesmith ability, though, is probably the kind of more important part, because that is going to to make your unit a lot safer. So if you had this Auxilia stuck in the middle of a bunch of robots, it's going to take a while before they're going to be, they'll all be within range, is what I'm saying. So they'll all get involved. And if they've got 2 wounds, that might make them very, very hard to crunch your way through. Okay, next up we have 2 Myrmidon units. So the first one is a Secular Host. This is the melee option. So for 2 bases, you're paying 30 points. So it's a little like the Legion Terminators, who get 4 bases for 50. So this will be 4 for 60. The main profile is similar to Secular, but Secular gets +1 CAF. The bolters are also quite similar, but they trade out accurate for an extra dice, which is actually a minor boost in this case. Both the Terminators and Secular hosts have Implacable, so they don't break and bleed. Obviously, the Terminators get a lot of fun stuff like their teleport, but the Seculars do get an extra ranged weapon with the errata, which is nice. They're not bulky as well, so you can stick them in a normal transport, and as we'll see later, it's probably going to be one of the main choices for them. What else about them? Oh, they do not have Cortex Controller, or do not have Cortex... What is the thing? Cybernetic Cortex. So these will happily take any orders you want to give them, which is great. So you can march them up, you can shoot if you need to. But yeah, these are ones that are probably going to be looking to get stuck into melee. Now, obviously it's +6, but it's not rend. So that is certainly a thing. A lot of the better ones are rend. But, you know, as for infantry, these are pretty good close combat guys. Second option for the Myrmidons is Destructor Host. Destructor Host. So these are the range options. So that is 3 CAF instead of 6, which is still quite good, to be fair. But the weapons are much, much better. So the Volkites are similar to bolters, but better range to hit. You trade Assault for the flag rate, so in a different way of getting extra hits, I guess. The big one, of course, is the Conversion Beamers, which really is their primary weapon. That 22-inch range is very like the Legion crack missile launchers, but you're getting -2 AP instead of -1, and you don't have the light anti-tank, which really is a negative trait. So they're actually a little bit better than the missile launchers, but they are costing 15 points rather than 10. I think if you could get a good few of these out on the table, they could do a lot of damage. They would be quite effective. Next up, we have the Arlatax. So again, this is another jump troop, which is fun. They have 3 dice of range weapons, all light anti-tank and with decent ranges, so 16 and 12. They do have Cybernetic Cortex, which means without help, they can only advance and charge. So that's what we're talking about the melee units. Those range weapons are great, but actually, you're not going to be able to first fire. Well, you will be able to advance, but sorry, they're not going to be able to march. So really on turn 1, you would like to have these next to a Cortex controller, so you can give them a march order, and they can actually get down the board a little bit faster. So that 7 move is pretty good, but if they were on turn 1 moving 14, that would be great. Okay, sorry, what are we looking at? So, yeah, the optimal range will be 12 inches for all the weapons, and once they get the chance, they'll really be looking to charge in. That, again, that's +6 CAF, but no rend. Now, the average of an extra rend dice is around 3.5, so CAF 6 is almost like +3 with rend. I did try look for a similar unit, but it's not really there. So this is relatively fast at that 7. And the jump packs obviously let it, bounce around and overbuilding stuff like that, which is great. It has 2 wounds, so even if it loses the first round of combat, it is going to survive, which is very, very interesting because melee can be a little bit random, and having that security blanket is quite nice. They also have a 6+ in Vol and Armored, so that means re-rolling saves against light weapons and ignoring the AP of light weapons. It is a single base for 40 points though. So it is very, very expensive. Unit size maxes out at 5, which will cost you 150 points. But quite interesting. Okay, a bit of minor lore before we get into the next unit. I've been working on my Iron Warriors army, and they ally quite nicely with the Mechanicum. In fact, there is in one of the Warhammer community downloads a special formation which is part of the Legion, but does let you include some of Mechanicum units. So I was looking at that, seeing what I would do. We're going to look at the Domitar in a second, and we can see here the Iron Circle is a formation of 6 Domitars, which form a honor guard for Perturabo, which is pretty cool. Now, this variant that you can see on screen for the, I assume it's for 30k, it's sort of 28mm scale, does have a hammer and shield, which is not what we're going to see. We are going to be seeing something else, but at the same time, getting 3 boxes of the Battle Automata box, so you could field a Iron Circle of 6 Domitars and paint it up in Iron Warrior colors does sound kind of cool. All right, let's have a quick look at what it looks like. So it is 35 points per model. So similar in many ways to the Artalax. So it's got 2 less move and 2 less calf, and no jump back. It is probably all about the missile launchers, though. So as you can see, you're getting the same firepower for 35 points as a Legion base gets for 10. So yeah, that's the comparison to the missile launchers. So is it going to be worth it? Like, you could get 4 of those missile launchers for 40 points, or you can get 1 of them for 35. Obviously, this is going to be a lot harder to kill. So it's got that 4+. Actually, what is it? Probably, I assume it's a 5+ from missile launcher. I'm not entirely sure. But it's got 2 wounds, which is kind of key. It does have an invul save. What else do we have? Okay, so they do have Graviton hammers. And we're going to see this as a bit of a theme for the Mechanicum as we go along, destroying buildings. So how does this work? So because they've got Wrecker 1, that trait lets them walk up to and into base contact with a building. So that isn't something you normally do. Normally you need a charge order to do that. But because you've got Wrecker, you can just stroll up beside a building. When you activate the detachment during their firing stage, whatever that might be, you can first try to destroy a building. Now, in theory, you can have 5 Domitars hiding behind a building and then have them all Graviton hammer the building one at a time until it goes to dust. So the way it works is, because you've got Wrecker, they automatically force a wound, and then the building has to save. Now, the building typically is going to be 5. So yeah, the Civitas Imperialis is going to be a 5+ save, but it saves on 2 dice. So that -2 AP is going to mean they need to roll a 7+ on 2 dice to not lose a wound. So it's about a 40% chance of doing a wound, and the buildings the Civitas Imperialis buildings do have 2 wounds to destroy a building. So yeah, a full squad of 5 should have a decent chance of taking down a building. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. If you're going to be playing this, and if you intend to destroy buildings, it's definitely something you should agree with your opponent ahead of time, because there are some different classifications of buildings. Typically, the Civitas Imperialis will be the Imperial civilian version, but maybe some of the buildings are a little bit tougher, a little bit stronger, so that might be something that needs to be discussed ahead of time. Anyway, weird model. So yeah, basically just a super tough missile launcher. Actually, let me have a look and quickly compare it to the Auxilia Walkers. What do they look like? So the Heavy Sentinel is 2 for 35 points, so you get 2 of them, and again does have similar weapons. So light ignores and then attack. Yeah, so it has the exact same missile launcher. Move 7 rather than 5. Save is still 4. Doesn't have any calf, so it's +0 calf, and does have morale. Actually, yeah, that unit doesn't have morale, which is kind of interesting. You will get 2 to the box, which means you can do it twice for your 70 points. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so obviously the Legion missile launchers are super good. I quite like the Heavy Sentinel patrol, to be honest. But yeah, you are making it tougher, and is that going to pay off? I'm not entirely sure. Still, cool enough model. The Graviton hammers are certainly interesting, and yeah, it might be worth. I might be still tempted to try doing my Iron Circle and see how that works out. Right, next up we are looking at the Castellax. Okay, so this is the last of the support options we have, and we do get 4 bases in the Battle Automata box, where for a lot of the others we only get 2. So the attachment size is 2, so you're going to be able to field 2 units of these straight from a single box. So yeah, it's at 35 points for 1. They have the same special rules and stats as the Domitar we were looking at for basically the same price. Now, the Domitar was all about long-range missiles. The Castellax is more about short-range bolt weapons. They do have a lot of dice, though. So each base is going to be putting out 4 dice at range 8. And because of that assault, you're going to get an extra dice out if you get to range 4. In a way, each base is almost like a detachment of 4 Legion Tacticals. So they do have better save. They have 2 wounds rather than the equivalent, which would be 4 across all the Tacticals. But then the damage output is about equivalent, but maybe a little bit more concentrated, because rather than being 4 bases that you need to find space for, it's just 1 base. Interesting. Yeah, I think maybe I need to kind of treat these as if they were Legion Tacticals and then see how they work in that kind of role. Okay, so that was all the support. Next up is the Vanguard units. So we have the Ursarax on the left, so you get 4 of those in the infantry box. And then we have the Vorax at the bottom and the Vulturax on the top. So we get 2 of each of these in the Battle Automata box. All right. So first, the Ursarax. Again, it is another jump back troop. Interesting. So this time the base numbers are identical to Legion Assault Detachment, but you are only getting 2 bases for 20, where the Legion get 4 bases for 30. So it's a little bit more expensive. The range weapon here is slightly better though, so you're getting 2 shots instead of 1, and you're getting Deflagrate trait for extra hits. Now, the assault troops aren't really great at getting into combat, to be fair, so this unit might actually be better off being maneuverable and shooting with those range 6 incinerators. Not great range, but with that move 7 and the gym packs, you should be able to get them into place, hopefully. They do not have any Cortex limitations, so they are able to just take their march order and then take their advance or take their first fires, whatever you need to get them done. I mean, they're probably going to be okay with +3 CAF. They will be able to pick on some of the smaller troops. They do only have wound 1, so if they do lose it, but yeah, I think this is probably a case where maybe you're going to be using them to hold locations and try use those incinerators to kind of clear out your infantry. Okay, next up are the Vorax. So these are walkers. They're fast at 7. They've got a decent save at 4+, and they've got an invul of 6+. So again, no morale, so they aren't going to break, which is great. They've got a good melee with +3 and rend on those power blade arrays, and they do have 2 wounds. So they're getting a lot done. They do have 4 deploy, so they'll immediately be 7 inches up the board, which again is quite nice. What else? Yeah, the weapons are quite juicy, with 5 dice in total across the rotor cannon and the lightning guns. If you can get in that 8 range sweet spot, and then rapid fire on the rotor cannon does mean that any 6s count as 2 hits. So they do have a Cortex rule, which means they can only march and charge. So unless you have a controller with them, they're not going to be firing their weapons. If you attach a Cortex controller to the unit, they will lose the forward advance, though. Actually, sorry, I stand corrected. I think the range on the Cortex controller is 8 inches. So what you could do is you could position them so after they move in, they will start within 8 inches of one of your Cortex controllers. But yeah, these guys will quickly outpace those move 5 options. And yeah, you'll be kind of trying to chase them to catch up, and yeah, they lose the guns if they don't. That's it in melee. I mean, yeah, 2 wounds each, and rend plus CAF 3 is gonna be quite effective, so that's decent. All right, do we have anything else? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 on how to use them. I think the Cortex controller is going to be a problem, or alternatively, just use them as a dedicated melee. Now, I mean, you could advance. You could forward deploy them and then charge them in, and then later have after they've cleared up some of the melee, later have a Cortex controller get close to them. You don't have to have one attached to them; they just have to be close enough and within the same formation. So then you can start using guns. Right, last in the Vanguard, we have the Vulturax. So another 4+ save, 2 wound unit, this time with a pretty zoomy 9-inch move. So it is armored, and it has invul 6+, so it'll make it tough enough. It's got 4 dice to attack within that range 10, which is a sweet spot. They're all 4+ to hit, which is pretty good. Now, that neutron flux trait on the arc blasters is kind of funny. It's actually effective against cybernetic cortex units. So this is essentially a Mechanicum and anti-Mechanicum tech option. It does have outflank, so you can start in reserve and come on from the edge. And again, we have that same issue with the Cybernetic Cortex, which is advance and march. But in this case, we're not going to be looking to get into close combat. So yeah, advance and charge is fine. And then if you can get a Cortex controller and you want to use a first fire order, then that is the option. For Bastion, there is only one slot. There is a Tanatar, which comes in its own box. You get 8 in total, of which you can make 4 of each variant. So yeah, we'll look at them in a second. We'll look at them now. So the Tanatar is a chunky 110 points for 2, so pretty expensive. It is slow at 4, very, very slow, and very much in comparison to the previous Automata, but it does have the same 4+ save and 2 wounds, along with being armored and 6+ in wool. So again, tricky to kill. It is another Cortex unit, so they can advance and first fire. So you're only really missing out on that march order if you wanted to. Although, given that the weapons have 18 and 22 range, maybe you're good with advance all the way. That said, this might be a good option for a battlesmith trait. So if you can get something attached to it to just follow it around, those two wounds you're going to have to do some good damage to them if you're going to be ignoring a third of the wounds that come true to them. Okay. Right, the first loadout is the Plasma Mortar and Mauler Bolter Cannon. So the Plasma Mortar is 18 range, has Demolisher and ignores cover. So Demolisher lets it target buildings, and ignores cover means you could just ignore the building and then just take out the garrison detachment in it. It's kind of fun. The Mauler Bolter is 8-inch range, but 3 dice. So realistically, you're probably going to be using the Mortar at distant targets, and you're going to waste the Mauler. But it is nice to know that if something gets close to you, you can rip into them. The other option is to trade out the Mortar for the Solex Heavy Las, and then that is paired with a Graviton Ram. Now, you do keep the Mauler Bolt Cannon, which I think is important. The Solex has better range, has a worst to hit and AP, but does have Armour Bane, so it forces vehicles, knights, and titans to reroll saves. The extra bonus here is you do get the Graviton Ram, which lets you do 2 damage to a building, but you don't have any AP on it. So you're going to be rolling 2d6, and they're going to be looking for, so they're looking for 5 pluses typically, which is probably reliable enough. That said, if you do get it through because you've got record 2, you're going to do 2 damage to it. So you just need 1 of these to fail. So yeah, if you can get a bunch of 2 or 3 of these up, you're going to be forcing your opponent to make saves, and they just need to fail 1. And if they fail 1, the building goes down. They are big, stompy robots, and they look quite pretty, I have to admit. They feel a little disjointed, though, from the mechanics. So you've got a single die, long-range weapon, and a short-range light weapon. And if you take the Ram, you also want to get melee with buildings. So realistically, they're probably just going to be expensive single die attacks. But, they will look pretty cool doing it. And those single dies will likely be impactful, even if it is quite slow in moving those 4 inches. I think, personally, I probably prefer the Mortar. But in reality, since the box makes 4 of each, you're just going to run both anyway. For tanks, we have 3 options. So there are... Well, actually, I say 3. We're going to look at 3 profiles, but really there's 4. So there's the Krios, which has 2 weapons, and then has a variant which has another weapon. But really it's just kind of 3 weapon variants. And then we have on the right-hand side, what is that one called? It's the Karknos. So the Karknos comes in a box of 4, and basically is an assault variant of the similar... No, it's not an assault variant. It's a variant of the similar-looking Triarch transport. As you can see, the ones so those 4 on the right, the 2 on the left, you can see they've popped open the hoods, and they've got rackets of missiles. And I think those are the weapons we'll be looking at in a second. Whereas on the left-hand side, we've got the Triaris, and basically they've got different gun options. All right, let's start with the Krios. Silly names. Okay, so this is move 8. It's got 3+ save, and it's got 1 wound. Those Volkite Cavalier sponsons are pretty nice. So they're point defense, so you can shoot after you move, and you don't have to match the main target. Accurate, so you get rerolls, which is going to be great when you're trying to overwatch with them. And once they do get some damage through, you are going to get extra hits with your deflag rate, which is very nice. The two main weapon options are both at 2 dice and AP -2. So it's an Irid Scourer, which is slightly better to hit and does get to ignore cover, but it has light AT, so you're going to use that nice AP -2 against vehicles. It is cheaper than a Predator and similar in many respects, but you are forced to take the point defense sponson weapon when with the Predators I quite like taking. Now that's kind of an option. But yeah, the key point here is your main weapon is a little better, and honestly having point defense is never a bad thing. Did we look at both? Okay, and then so the lightning cannon is straightforward. I mean, it's better range, worse to hit, -2 AP. Yeah, and doesn't have anything fancy about it. So actually, I mean, having that long range is really, really good. It is going to get a lot of work done. The other big option, though, so this is another variant of the Krios. I don't know why I didn't put it in the same profile, but this is the Venator Squadron, and it has the same sponsons, same base profile, but it does have a different weapon. So the Pulsar Fusel. Actually, sorry, this is a little bit cheaper. So so the previous ones were 100 points for 3, so 33.3 recurring, whereas these are 60 for 2, so 30. Okay, so slightly cheaper. And yeah, they come in pairs rather than 3. Now, the main weapon here is the 12 inches, which actually is nice because it kind of pairs up. It hits on a 3+, has -3 AP, and it, so relatively simple. Interesting. So lower range, I guess, is the difference, and a slightly better -AP and better hit than the lightning cannon. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then the last tank option is the Karaknos. So I've closed it there, but that is the mortar battery across the top, which is in this model is closed. Okay, so it's the same base size as the other two tanks, and at 40 points per 1 is a chunk more expensive. So the lightning locks are 2 dice for point defense. The main weapon, though, is the mortar with a 30-inch range, barrage, and ignores cover. So barrage means they don't need line of sight, but they suffer -1 to hit if they don't. So 2 dice. 5+ to hit if you have line of sight. Is that right? No, sorry. If you don't have line of sight, it's 5+, and 4+ if you do have line of sight. It's going to be -1 AP, and it is going to ignore cover. That's pretty great. And with that 30 range, once you position them, they're probably going to be able to do this from everywhere on the board. They do have shock rams, which is that big thing at the front. It's quite interesting. So you just drive up to the building, because it does a wrecker, and try smash through, I guess. So it does have -2 AP and wrecker 2. So again, we're looking at a 40% chance to take down a building. We'll just straight do it. Again, yeah, so lots of the building destruction options in this particular faction, which is interesting. All right, now, next up is transports. There is only one option. So this looks very similar to the one we were just looking at, but this one has a space for little men. So this is the Triaris. So it comes in a box of 4, and there's no customization. There's no options in it. You just build them as is. It is pretty straightforward. So it is move 8, it is a 3+ save, and it's got 1 wound. So it's got 4 dice of light weapons up to 8 inches. And 1 dice is accurate for a reroll and deflag rate for an extra hit. The other 3 are all light AT, so they can target vehicles, but obviously it's going to be at -1 AP against the infantry. Okay. Now, in the errata, this was changed from large transport 4 to transport 4. So what does that actually mean? It means no walkers, no bulky infantry, which is any of the ones with jump packs, we've seen tons of. So what can they transport? You can transport your Archmagus, you can transport tech trolls, tech priests, and both kinds of myrmidons. I think that's it. So really not much at all. Getting your tech trolls into position is going to be nice because they are cheap and good for just dumping in places. And the myrmidons are super effective, so getting them moving a little bit faster is probably nice. Yeah, interesting. And yeah, because a lot of those are going to be 4 bases, you probably don't have anything spare. Sometimes it's quite nice to have a transport of 5 because you're able to pack in your extra command staff HQ. But in this case, no, you'll have to work out how you're going to squeeze that in. So what is it? The tech trolls come in 5s? Is it 4s? Hold on. Let me quickly look back. Yeah, the tech trolls are in 4s. The myrmidons come in 2s. The tech priests are a single base. And then how about the Archmagus? So the Archmagus counts as 1 even if you've got them on the Abeyant. So yeah, that is fine. So I guess you could lose out in a spot. You could maybe put 2 HQs in with a single pair of myrmidons or something like that. Anyway, I'm sure you can work it out. You're probably just going to do it with the tech trolls anyway, which don't really need a Cortex controller. All right, we're going to go with formations. So there are 5 we'll be looking at. 4 come from the Dark Mechanicum book, and 1 is from a PDF that went up Warhammer Community. I'm only looking at the Mechanicum ones. If you want to go look at Warhammer Community, you will find a download, and that will give you options for all of the different factions that let you include Mechanicum stuff. But we're only looking at the ones that are technically Mechanicum ones. Okay. So for all the legions, or like for the legions, which is kind of my default reference, I think honestly it will be the same for most people. There is that one formation that gives you rhinos to dedicated support. This is a similar idea. This is the Tagma Subcovenant. Now you must have a HQ, so it's going to be an Archmagus. Then your core must be tech trolls, so it's going to be 4 bases each. You will probably look to support. I'd use those 2 support slots for the myrmidons, I'd imagine, because they're the only ones that are really going to benefit from getting the transport, because nothing else will. And after that, you kind of go through the options and see what you're looking for. And again, you can see at the bottom there is an option for a Titan or 2 Knights, which are going to count within your points for Mechanicum side, which is very, very nice. A lot of options there. I think so. Bastion, Vanguard, Battle Tank. Do we have everything? Support core. We probably have everything in there, but only the ones you're kind of limited on options. Still quite nice. And this is something that you can build out of a single box to get that core in. Now you're not going to get you're not going to necessarily have your transports in that single box, but you will have the 10 trolls you need, and then you can use your support options for your myrmidons, and then there's even more support. You can do tax in your core, in your optional core. You can do, what else could you do? It does get kind of limited fast, actually, to be fair. All right, so let's have a look. What else we have? Now, this is another approach, and it does have limitations. So this is the Legions Cybernetica cohort. So the idea here is that you're going to have all Cortex and Cortex controller units. And the bonus for using this particular formation is it increases the range from 8 to 12, which is very nice. So we did say there were a couple of problems with some units. So the Vorax, for example, want to forward deploy for them? I think it might be. And then the Vulturex comes on from the side. So those are ones where you might want to have a controller near them, but they're off doing their own thing, so it could be tricky. So stretching out your control range on that to 12 instead of 8 is going to be pretty considerable. You do lose a couple of units, though. You cannot have Myrmidons, and you cannot have the Usurax, which are one of the Vanguard options, because they do not have Cortex or Cortex controller. Okay, so what do you need? So you will need at least a HQ, so probably an Archimagus. You are going to need core. Now, the core options here can be whatever you want. Even ones that don't have none of the core ones actually have the Cortex rules, but there is an exemption for them. But any of the support ones you pick are going to have to be from that Arlatax, Dominatar, Castellax, Vorax, or Vulturax options. What else do you get? You get 2 more HQ options, which means, yeah, you could go for. I mean, these are more Cortex controllers, but like if you had you can slot in your second Archmagus, and if you had another box, you could slot in a third. You've got that support, so that's 3 or 4, 5. So it's a bit of an interesting one because you've got those 2 options at the bottom, depending on obviously how you want to play it out. But in theory, you've got 3 support straight away, and you only have 1 Vanguard. So you have to decide between your Vorax and your Vulturax. So the Arlatax, the Dominatar, and the Castellax are your support options. The only support options you can take because they have to have the Cortex controller. So you've got the 2 required slots and you go 1 optional slot. Obviously, spreading things out can be better, but this is a case where you could just, if you have more Arlatax, you just keep putting them with the same unit until you've maxed out that unit or maxed out detachment. And then to get your extra Vanguard slot, you open up those 2, which will let you take maybe your Vorax and your Vulturax, but you will have a bit of a you'll have an extra one left over for some flexing, I guess. Okay, so no Bastion, no tank option. Yeah, so if you're looking to leverage Cortex Battle Automata like the ones we got there, then this will be a good choice. And you're not really interested in the transports. And look, the transports aren't actually any good for any of your walkers. It's useless. So if you're not going to get a benefit out of it, maybe split it out. So yeah, you could get 2 minimum size trawl units, a single trawl unit to fill that slot, and then you can actually get some work done with the rest of them. Yeah, and possibly having some of the tech priests might be good, because if you can spare up a support slot, you can obviously take 3 of them just to get more controllers and scatter them around. All right. Next up, we have a tank formation. So this is the Autocratori Regiment. So you must have 3 tanks, and the bonus is a 1 vehicle from each of those can be made a Cortex controller. Now, that isn't going to benefit your tanks, but will benefit some of your support options. And what do we have? Okay, yeah, we can see one of those support options is already locked in as a tech priest. So you've really only got the 2 support options, so it's quite narrow. But it does mean that some of your tanks could be supported by some battle automata, and they will have a little bit more control. You'll be able to pick what you want with the orders. Now, there isn't really a way to get any of this out in a single box, which is a little bit unfortunate. So the Krios does have 6 tanks, and the Venator comes in a size 2 for your detachment. So you could go 3 Venators, but unfortunately, with the way the box is set up, you can only make 4 Venators out of it, I think. And then 2 of them have to be the normal lightning option. And unfortunately, that requires a detachment of 3. Similarly, if you're to go over at the Karaknos, the box size is 4 and the minimum detachment size is 2. So any 2 tank boxes will get you up to speed for this particular option. And yeah, you've got that extra battle tank optional slot if you wanted to use that instead of going elsewhere. But yeah, you're not going to be able to get this out of a single box, which is unfortunate. The Order Reductor subdivision is the Thanatar formation. So this is Bastions, and this is where you get your Thanatars. This has 3 Bastion slots, although really you just need 2, 1 for each type. You can obviously just max out detachment size each time. Let me just double check how big that is. Okay, max detachment size is 8. So yeah, you could run a single box in a single Bastion slot, but really, because you'll have the two separate types, because they're only built 4 and 4, you're probably better splitting them so you can maximize your targets. Okay, what do we actually get out of this? So yeah, you are going to need the infantry box to get at least one Archmagus, and for that support slot, you're probably going to fill it with a relatively cheap tech priest, just so you can make sure that you've got all of your Tanatars benefiting from that battlesmith trait, which is going to make them super tough. Yeah, so honestly, this looks like after you've built your initial section, your initial formation, and this will be the optional formation that you get after you buy your Tanatar box. So kind of cool. All right, next up, this is the last option, and this is one of the support formations. So if you haven't seen support formations before, you can only take a support formation for each main formation you have. So you must have another formation, and then you can take a support formation. If you have 3 main formations, you can take 3 support formations, but you can't just take this itinerant cybernetic cohort and not as your main formation, and you couldn't take 3 of them if you've only got 1 other main formation, if that makes sense. So this is a little bit of flexibility, and this kind of lets you take all the stuff that you aren't able to take elsewhere. So basically, you've got either 3 support or 3 Vanguard, and then an optional 2 support and 2 Vanguard. So it should be able to get you lots of stuff. Now, the drawback is nothing's going to be able to benefit from the Cortex controller. Having Cortex controller in it is kind of wasted. So you must have the Cybernetics Cortex X special rule. You can't have the controller one, and you can't benefit from the controller one. So yeah, there's a bunch of options you can take, but basically the ones that I've got listed up there are not options. Why did I put... Oh, I put the first one is a HQ. That doesn't need to be there. I probably meant to put the Tech Priest instead. Yeah, that's probably what I meant. Okay, but yeah, it is super handy because between the infantry and battle automata boxes, there are tons of options, and you might not be able to fit in all the slots. But yeah, the drawback here is you're not going to be able to have Cortex controller. But if you have units that don't necessarily need it, you don't really care, then this formation works fine for them. Obviously, you do need at least 3 of the either support or Vanguard to fill it out. But there it is. Okay, so that is everything. That is everything from Mechanicum. We are going to start talking about Dark Mechanicum soon. But yeah, so what's interesting about it? They've got a lot of fast units that I wasn't kind of expecting. Their primary core unit is probably going to be those trolls, which are just a useless body that holds firm and doesn't move. So that does have benefits. They've got a couple of tanks as options. And yeah, a lot of fast units, a lot of jump troops, which I really wasn't expecting. But I guess that's kind of the nature of these battle automata. There are lots of options. Okay, so let's get into the Dark Mechanicum. So this is, this is the other side. So when Horus went traitor, the Fabricator General Kelbor Hal swore himself to Horus, ending up splitting the Mechanicum into basically a civil war on Mars. Now, one of the reasons the Dark Mechanicum came about is because Horus had authorized the opening of vaults of technology that the Emperor had forbidden. So this is where we're getting these creepy spider-like insectoid walkers. They are very, very cool. There is the larger ones, which we'll see later, do actually have rules for Titanicus, which is great to see. So if that's your jam, and it certainly is mine, you can field them on a slightly different type of battlefield. They are all networked and are kind of semi-autonomous. No, they're kind of intelligent. It's bad tech. But yeah, what's interesting about this is the Dark Mechanicum was actually kind of the real Mechanicum, at least for them, because the Fabricator General swore to that side. So anyone else who stayed loyal to the Imperium was actually going against the chain of command, as it were. And even though they seem to have won out, the Dark Mechanicum use interesting technologies. They have a habit of using the warp and warp influences in their technologies and are a bit batshit, to be honest. But super, super creepy. All right, let's have a look. So, a bunch of stuff is straight up banned. So, no Vorax, no Castellax, no Tanatar, no Artalax, and no Domitar. So, let me see. Artalax, Domitar, and Castellax from support options. Vorax is from the Vanguard, and the Tanatar from the Bastion. So we are going to need to fill those slots out again. Well, I don't think Bastion ever gets filled. There are 2 boxes for the Dark Mechanicum. There's a Stalkers and there's a Heavy Stalkers. So the Stalkers box on the left has 6 Light Walkers and 8 bases of Swarmers, which you can kind of see at the back. They're kind of like creepy worm things. The Walkers come in 2 variants each. There are 3 variants of the Light Walkers, and you get 2 of each in each box. Then the Heavy Stalker has 4 models, but as far as I'm aware, they can be built with all the options, but they do have lots of customizability, or so I'm told. I've yet to try this one, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so let's get stuck in. First up is a new HQ detachment. So this is a Light Walker, move 7, 3+ save, 3+ calf, or +3 calf, and 2 wounds. Okay, so it's quite similar to a Kratos, but with a slightly worse save. Yeah, because a Kratos has a 2+ save. So you only get 1 weapon, right? You have to pick one of these 3. But honestly, they're all pretty spicy. Okay, so the Las Cutter, it's only 4-inch range, but it does have Bunker Buster, which means that -3 AP gets to double to 6 AP when destroying a building, which is pretty cool. It's only going to do that 1 wound, though, right? Because it's only got... it's a good chance that -6 is going to do a wound. So 2 of them with Las Cutters should be able to cut through buildings pretty fast. Then you got the Exoplanar Cannon option, which is long range at 10. Still quite tight, though. And it's perfect for murdering infantry. So it's got 2 dice ignoring cover. Ignoring cover. And it's got Shred. So Shred means that infantry, walkers, and cavalry have to reroll their saves. Last up, we have that Storm Laser. So it's 3 dice, 15 range. It is less likely to hit at a 5+, but rapid fire means that 6s are going to count as 2 hits. And it's got Shield Bane, which lets them take down Void Shields. So you have to have a certain minus AP before you can take down Void Shields, and Shield Bane lets you get past it, which is nice. So, yeah. We also have a bunch of additional special rules to understand. So the first is Construct Shields. So it's got Construct Shields 1. So they're a little like Void Shields, but they don't reignite. So in this case, the first hit the Cyclops takes, it'll actually go to the shields, and you don't bother rolling your armor save. If you increase the number of Stalkers in this detachment, so it starts at 1, and it can go up to, max of 4, then the enemy needs to clear all the shields in the detachment before a single armor roll is made. So you are going to have to hit, and remember, if you're not going to be able to shoot it with light options, you're going to have to actually hit with something that could damage a vehicle. And then you need to get through all 4 of those wounds before you can even start touching the units. Then, after you've got past those 4, then you need to do another 2 wounds to get the first of them down. So you need to go to do 6 wounds from the get-go to get a single one of those Cyclops. Now, it will be out of a full group of 4, which maybe you don't necessarily have. You might just have 1, you might have 2. The second rule to look at is the No Sphere Controller. Now, this pairs with Networked Anima special rule that you will see on some of your units. It doesn't actually do anything by itself, but it will turn up in some of the formation rules. So this unit is the only one with it, so it will be pretty key anytime that comes up. And then you got Nimble, so it ignores difficult terrain. Makes sense with those legs. And then it's Traitor, which just means you're always on Team Horus. Next up, we have a new core option. So this is the Butcher. So it's similar to the previous profile, but a little bit faster. So 8 rather than 7. And it has a 4+ save, which is slightly worse. The weapons are all similar to the previous, but slightly worse. There is a Bunker Buster, a light attack, and then rather than a Titan Killer, you just got a solid Meltagun profile. Alas, no Rend. So even though this is CAF +6, this isn't a melee monster I was kind of hoping it would be. Again, for comparison, at 45, this is 10 points more expensive than 4 Legion Tacticals. If you went for bolters, so bolters in this, the Stalker Maxima bolters, it would be 1 less attack dice, so 3 attack dice rather than 4. There would be 2 less wounds because you've obviously got 4 stands, and actually probably just 1 less because you want to count that with shield of 1. Now, that's not to say this unit is bad. That's just a point of reference. The weapons are short range. But this is still very fast and a hard to kill unit, so you will be pretty happy to run a few of them. It does look a lot scarier on the board. I haven't seen this particular one, but I have seen these stalkers field it against me, and it was terrifying because there's so many rules to understand, and they do look quite scary, to be honest. And there's definitely an intimidation factor. All right, so that was a new core detachment. So this is a new light armor. Now, like the previous two, so you get 2 stalkers, you get 2 cyclops, and you also get 2 archers in that stalkers box. So it's similar to the Butcher, but it doesn't have that high CF, and weirdly, this doesn't have any shields. This always has the Storm Laser Flenser, which is good range and notably has Shield Bane. Then you get to pick one of the 3 options. So the Exoplanar Cannon, which ignores cover and shred, so great for murdering infantry, especially in buildings. The bolters are similar, but they're point defense, so you can target a secondary target, which is something I love. Then we've got the Volkite Culverins, which have deflag rate. So nothing amazing, but there are options. And at 35 points, this unit isn't particularly expensive. Again, if we go back to that tactical example, the Flenser and bolters are 6 dice, which is pretty effective, and it is actually the same cost. The last model we have in the Stalker box is the Swarmers. So these are Vanguard. They are cheap at 4 for 30 points. They are fast at 7 inches, but easy enough to kill. So a 6+ save and just 1 wound. They have jump packs, which is fun. Again, it doesn't mean no transports. The weapon options are repeaters, which are light and shred, so good against infantry, or las cutters with bunker busters. Now, alas, doubling a -1 to a -2 against buildings isn't great, but I guess it could still be good at attacking vehicles, which it can actually go in against. Remember that, because that will be relevant a little bit later. This is the stars of the Dark Mechanicum, the Overlords, the Heavy Stalkers. So expensive at 175 points, but you get 2 for that. So what's that? 87, 8 points. Each of them get 2 construct shields. So combined, you're getting 4 hits before you can start doing damage on them. And after that, they do have a 2+ save. With 2 wounds each. So these are super heavies. This is in the scary territory. Now, each Overlord will have 2 weapons. It'll have a Bombard or a Laser Array, and it'll have a Las Cutters or an Irradiation Engine. The Bombard notably has Bypass, which ignores Void Shields. So fantastic if you're going to be going up against Titans. Then it also ignores cover, and it has shred. So again, you're going to be looking at taking infantry buildings. The Laser Array has rapid fire to get extra hits, and it has Shield Bane, meaning that it will count against shields. So very, very interesting. So different approaches. One will take down shields, one will ignore shields. Now, the Laser Array is probably better at 5 dice rather than the 3. But yeah, you're trading up the ignores cover. Oh, that's assuming we're not thinking about Titans. Let's put Titans aside for a second. So it's either 3 dice with ignored cover or 5 dice without it. So it does have rapid fire. What's rapid fire do again? Oh yeah, so rapid fire is you're doing double hits on 6s. Oh, and that's with the 5 dice. So that makes that option even better, arguably. But then Shred is super good against infantry making reroll. Anyway, similar. You can pick your poison, as it were. Speaking of poison, so the other option is Las Cutters or the Irradiation Engine. So the Las Cutter is again a super close, 4 inches. It's a reliable 2+ hit and has -3 AP. So again, we can see Bunker Buster for taking out buildings. So you're going to get up to that 6 -6 once you're going in it. It has Rend, so extra hits in. An extra D6 in melee. Although it's not doing much with that +3 calf at this size or this scale, but it's going to be effective. Now, where it's really interesting, it does have Engine Killer 1. So if you do get a wound in on a vehicle or bigger, then you do get to do an extra wound, which is super, super effective. So that is going to be on the Las Cutters. Obviously, you need to get quite close. So you're within 4 inches, but you don't want to be in melee. Yeah. Then the last option you have is the Irradiation Engine, which is probably going to be a little more popular. So 10 range, 3 dice, -3 AP. Again, ignores cover. So pretty great for murdering infantry in buildings. Assuming you do want to build these with a single goal, Bombard and the Irradiation Engine look really good at clearing buildings. Killing Titans might be the Lazare and Las Cutters. And I say, because you're going to have the lots of dice going up against the shields, and once you can finally get them down, you're going to have the Engine Killer. See, the problem with it is maybe it's going to be more effective against vehicles. But yeah, the problem with it is the Titans unfortunately get to choose the order that the damage is assigned. So what they'll do is they'll choose to have the hit from that Engine Killer assigned to them first, and then they'll bounce it off with a Void Shield. And then they will take some of the light hits from the laser array. So in Titanicus, you do it the opposite way around. The defender gets to choose the order of hits, but in Legions Imperialis, the defender gets to choose. Did I say it right? In Legions Imperialis, the attacker chooses, and the defender in Legions Imperialis. Oh my god, am I just saying this over and over again? Titanicus, the attacker chooses. Imperialis, the defender chooses. Okay, we'll move on. It's not really too relevant for this. So yeah, in this case, it might be that the Bombard is actually better against Titans because they can just ignore the shields. So if you have the Bombard and you have the Irradiation Engine, so all of the hits from the Irradiation Engine are going to be popping off Void Shields, but even if Void Shields are still up, you are going to be able to bypass them and get some damage. Now, it is only going to be at a -1 AP, but actually getting to do some damage on a Titan could be good, especially if there's a few of these. All right. That is the end of the new units. So we're going to have a look at some of the formations. So again, there are 4 main ones, and then we are going to look at an extra support one as an option at the end. Right. So the first is Terror Protocol. And let's skip straight back down to the special rules. When you activate the Butcher, it gets +2 to move, so it'll be up to 10, if it's close to the HQ Stalker. So I think if it's within, I think that rule is probably similar. It's probably an 8-inch. Let me double check. Yeah, the network anima is 8 inches. So if they're within 8 inches of a Cyclops, you are going to get an extra +2 move. So they'll be zooming along at 10 move, and they'll be able to get close up with their short-range weapons to be quite effective. Now, you could in theory switch out the HQ here for an Archmagus, but it would mean no special ability because they need to have that Noosphere controller thing, whatever it's called. So, interestingly, this is a single box right here. Now, I've taken the Swarmers as they're from the same box, but alternatively, you could use the Usurax Jump Troops. You can increase the size of the HQ, so you've got 2 Cyclops, in which case the only things unused in this box are 2 Archers, because unfortunately we do not have any light armor slot. You'd find space elsewhere. You do have Core and you do have Vanguard, so this is something where if you wanted to, you could put some of the Cyber Trolls. What can you put in the Vanguard? So the Vanguards are you can do more Swarmers or you could do more Seracs, and you have options there. Would you include a Titan or Knight? Oh, it's a specific one. Has to be a Warhound pack. Interesting. Okay. And what else do we have? Okay, this is the next one. So this is the Purge Protocol. And this basically rounds out the rest of the box. So Purge Protocol is 1 heavy armor and 2 light armor. So you can use your archers for this. The heavy detachment size is 2, but you could pad it out to 4. Or you can have it as one of the optional slots you can see up to the right. The special ability is very good. If a controller hits a target, then all the other networked units get to reroll 1 for the rest of the turn. So the trick here is the HQ is an expanded option. So you don't have to benefit from the special rule. You don't have to take a HQ unit. But if you do take a Cyclops in that optional HQ unit, you are going to get your advantages. So what we could do is we could take one of the 2 Cyclopses that we get in the box. So one will be in the previous formation, one will be in this formation. Then you're going to have your 2 archers filling out those 2 light armor slots. And then you're going to have your 4 overlords in the heavy armor. So 2 of the heavy armor slots will have 2 each. And then you've got a full box. Pretty cool. So yeah, I like that. 2 boxes, everything used. Really great to see. This next one is a little more fun. So I did mention that the Swarmers have Bunker Buster, and they do have a which kind of a little bit silly, but at least it was good against vehicles. And this formation actually is might be relevant for it. Would it be relevant for it? No, you're probably going to be looking at the calf. Okay, all right. Let's talk about what we have here first. So basically, this is all Swarmers. So you can take your minimum requirement is 3 detachments of 4 bases each. The special rule gives them all infiltrate. Fantastic. You can pay 15 points to make a detachment a controller and give it a 6+ invul. So and then what that does is any of the other units near it are counted as 1 scale higher. So what you can do is you can use this to get on top of vehicles and stop them from getting away, because you will be able to pin them. So normally if infantry goes up against vehicles can just drive away because they don't really care. Whereas with these guys, they will count as vehicles. So when they swarm over the vehicles in melee, now that's the catch. These are CAF +1. So they aren't super great in melee, but it does mean they're relatively cheap and that they are able to lock down tanks and force them into melee fights when really they prefer to just drive away and shoot with their big fancy guns. Because they have infiltrate, you can kind of get them way back. So this is something that you could take out annoying units that are sitting at the back and are destroying things at range, and you're basically able to neutralize those for relatively cheap points. So pretty cool here. You're not going to be able to do this out of a single box. You do need a minimum of 12. So that is going to be, you're going to have 2 boxes, in which case you're going to have an extra, or you have another 6 of those light walkers. So it will start adding up. Next up, we have the Dark Tagma subcovenant. So we already looked at for previous detachments we've been looking at, or previous formation we've been looking at all the new fancy models. But don't forget that you can use a lot of the normal Mechanicum units in this. And this is the equivalent of the normal Tagma subcovenant. They can basically get you those tri-RS. So there are lots of slots here. Now, you could replace the Archmagus with a Cyclops Stalker. In theory, you're not actually going to get any benefit out of it. The light armor and the heavy armors can be archers and overlords. There is a core for butcher, but that Vanguard can only be fit. going to say the Vanguard can be filled with Swarmers. No, the Vanguard can be Swarmers or Ursarax. You're not locked in. Okay, what else do we have? Yeah, so, I mean, look, it's just a solid way of using some of the detachments from the Mechanicum infantry and support. Yeah, and from your Battle Automata box if you wanted. Okay, and yeah, obviously you can have some of the normal tanks in there rather than the creepy walkers. Okay. So this is the Ironbound Rune Host. This is a little bit of a weird one. So there are a bunch of models that you cannot take in the Dark Mechanicum, and if you want to take them, you'd take them as an allied attachment. So they wouldn't be part of your main force, be part of your 30%. However, this is the support attachment. So this is the Ironbound Rune Host, and it's a bit of a weird one. The support slots here are taken up from units from the Mechanicum army list, not the Dark Mechanicum. But they must have Cortex or Cortex Controller. So all of a sudden, the Castellax, the Artilax, and the Domitar are back in play. Now, the Cortex options all change to March and Charge, though. So you're probably going to be wanting either something like the Artilax, which, charge up with its snappy claws and get some Lee, or what you might want to do is if you want to use your Domitar or your Castellax, so the Domitar obviously has those long-range missiles, and the Castellax is all about bolter. You're going to want a controller next to them, so you're going to want your HQ to be your Archmagus, or you're going to need one of those support slots to be used by the Tech Priest. Okay, now, whatever option you go with, one of the cool things is they get a Dread Aura 3-inch special rule. Probably going to be more effective on the Artilax than anything else. All it does is it subtracts 1 from the morale of the enemy detachment, so make them slightly more likely to break, which is pretty cool. So, more importantly, you do get to play with all of your toys, which is pretty nice. So having, being able to play with everything in and just have a kind of a drawback to it was pretty fun. All right, and that brings us to the end. So, good Lord, this is an hour and 11 minutes by my reckoning so far. This is going to be a long video, so good job on making it this far. Thank you very much. I don't hold it against you if you've skipped around. So we have lots and lots of options across these boxes. The infantry and the Battle Automata boxes are pretty busy. You'll be able to run formations with just a single box, but you're going to have lots of detachments that just have 2 bases. And maybe they won't be able to get a lot of work done because no matter how good a single shooter is, if it's just a single shooter against 10, numbers have a quality all of their own. So multiple boxes obviously are going to help with that. But once you start doing that, you might find yourself feeling only about half of the units. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are a couple of units that you don't necessarily run out of your Legion. And yeah, if you can find the better units and choose the better things, that's not necessarily bad. Now, the Dark Mechanicum, on the other hand, are super, super tight. So a box of Stalkers and a box of Heavy Stalkers can all get fielded, every last one, in a Purge along with a Terror formation. I think that comes about 770 points. But yeah, I'm impressed. I like that a lot. Now, myself, I'm not entirely sure what I want to pick up yet. In regards to the overall Mechanicum, I think, getting those 2 Dark Mechanicum boxes sounds like a lot of fun. And they'll go well with my Iron Warriors. But I would also like to pick up some of the Mechanicum, but I'm not quite sure how many boxes of this should I be picking up of anything. It probably is going to be 2 of the infantry and 2 of the Battle Automata, which is very expensive already. For me, boxes are around €40. So 4 of them is €160. That is not money to be just throwing around on little men. But yeah, what we're probably going to be doing is, what I'll probably end up doing is pick up 1 or 2, maybe a box here, a box there. And if it gets anything like my Legion collection, it'll just spiral quickly out of control and I'll eventually have tons everywhere. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look through, and hopefully it's given you a little bit more insight to the faction as it has given myself. And hopefully you'll have a few ideas on what you want to get for yourself. So thank you very much for listening. And check in with me later. If there's anything you'd like me to do, Legion Imperialis wise, please put a comment and I will eventually get around to it. these kind of format does take a while and can be quite intimidating. So yeah, stay tuned and yeah, have a great week. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.